We believe that it is our right to use our weapons against military facilities of those countries who allow the use of weapons against our facilities. We've warned you about this, but you've made your choice.
So you guys just heard it. It's not a big secret, nor is Russia trying to keep this a secret. They are trying to let it be internationally known on the world stage that they have warned NATO. NATO hasn't listened. So now it looks like they're going to possibly start attacking NATO bases if something doesn't change soon. And Putin has been putting out statements. He hasn't just been addressing Russia. He's filmed a few videos addressing the world, but our media isn't really playing it. And if you take some time to find a deeper, or to try to have a deeper understanding about what's happening here, it's not as cut and dry as Russia bad, US good. You know, that's the easy way to look at things, but that's not necessarily the case here. Now, I'm not telling you that Russia or Putin is a good guy or that they're the good guys, but there's a reason why we've reached the point that we're at right now, and a lot of it is due to NATO. We're not total angels, okay? But right now, it's very concerning because, like I said, Russia just let it be known on the world stage in front of diplomats and politicians from all over the world that hey, you know, if you're not going to back down on these long-range missiles, we're going to strike NATO bases or NATO targets. Now, here's something that is a little more secretive. There's been some interesting moves in Russia over the past, let's say 18 hours or so, maybe a little bit longer. And don't quote me on this, but from the looks of things, Russia is about to launch, they're about to launch an attack. Now, I'm not saying they're going to launch a nuclear missile. I don't know if this attack will be on a NATO base, maybe the missile defense base in Poland. I don't know what the target will be, but it looks like they are planning a retaliatory strike somewhere. Will it be something like what we saw them drop on Ukraine a few days ago? Will it be a target in Ukraine? Maybe, but all I'm saying, if it were my best guess, I would say probably somewhere within the next 48 hours, we're going to see a major strike that is in response to these long-range missiles that the US, the UK, and now France has given Ukraine the go-ahead to use. Now, a lot of people seem to be confused here. I've tried to explain this 1,000 times. I already know what the argument is. You see, people like me were being really, we're criticizing Biden and we're criticizing the UK and France for giving Ukraine the go-ahead to use these weapons because we know what the repercussions are. We know what this leads to. No one is trying to say that Ukraine does not have the right to defend itself. And no one is trying to regulate what type of weapons Ukraine uses. What you have to understand is that these weapons are supplied by us, and that makes a big difference. If you are fighting someone in the middle of the street and they go to the neighbor's house to borrow a weapon, you're going to have problems with the neighbor too, right? So that's kind of what's happening here. But what people need to understand is these long-range missiles, it's not as simple as, hey, here's some missiles, use them how you want. No, it requires direct involvement from the US or from France or from the UK when we're providing these missiles. Not only are we the ones producing them and providing them to Ukraine, our military personnel has to be directly involved, okay? It's not as simple as we give you the missile, you use it how you want. No. They require our military personnel to work these missiles, to use these missiles, all the way down to finding out the targets and the logistics. Listen, things that are more complicated than I can understand or even explain. All of it requires the direct involvement from the US or from whatever country is providing these missiles, which when you look at it, okay, now it's the US basically directly attacking Russia. or it's the UK, or it's France. That's what this is. Because it's not as, like I said, it's not as simple as we give you some weapons and you use them. No, it's like we got to give you the weapons and then we got to have our people basically use the weapons for you on your behalf. That's kind of what this is. We're going to give you the weapons and then our military personnel will use the weapons against Russia on your behalf. But we don't want you to look at us like we're the bad guys for using these missiles. No, blame it on Ukraine. That's, the easiest way I think I can explain it to people. Because some people think it's just that simple. Like, we'll just give you something, you use it. No, there's a reason why Russia is looking at this like, oh, these are direct attacks from NATO. But as all of this is going on, I see that some people in America support this stuff. And it saddens me because I don't think a lot of them realize how serious this has gotten. It's gotten to the point where, listen, you can have your own opinion. If you support giving Ukraine long-range missiles, then you need to be ready to go to war. It's that simple. You can support Ukraine, you can support us sending the money and weapons all you want, but now it's reached a point where you got to be ready to back up that support with your life. Because that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at possibilities of drafts throughout Europe. God knows what would happen here in America. Hell, now the Biden administration is basically telling Ukraine they need to go round up all of the fighting age men above the age of 18. 18 and older. You see, up until now, Ukraine was only using people 25 and older for their war efforts against Russia. They weren't going and snatching up 18-year-olds off the street. Now, they were riding around snatching up 26, 27-year-olds, yeah. But now the Biden administration and NATO, they're pressuring Ukraine to go round up all of their 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, all of their young men, and basically force them to fight this war. So if that could happen in Ukraine, where do you think it's going to happen next? Like I said, up until this point, you had to be 25. Let's go ahead, let's dive just a tidbit more into the information. Senior U.S. officials are calling on Ukraine to lower its military service age to 18 to address manpower shortages in its fight against Russia. Senior U.S. officials say the need right now is manpower. The Russians are in fact making progress, steady progress in the east, and they are beginning to push back against Ukrainian lines. Mobilization and more manpower could make a significant difference at this time as we look at the battlefield today. As of right now, if you look at some of these men on the front lines fighting for Ukraine, it will make you so sad because it was like at the beginning of the war, you saw all of these younger faces. Now the faces look increasingly older. A lot of these men out there are in their 40s, 50s. Some of them can barely walk. And I'm not talking about from injuries from the war. I mean before they were snatched off the streets and in many cases forced to fight. I'm talking old men that have no business being on the battlefield. And yes, I don't know how many of you all have seen it. There's videos out there. You can go look them up. Ukraine has soldiers with Down syndrome on the front lines fighting. Really scary stuff. But now, because things are getting worse, it looks like they're going to be drafting even younger people to throw into the meat grinder. And like I was explaining earlier, you can support Ukraine all you want. You can be as gung-ho about this as you want. But now it's about time that you're going to have to back it up with actions. Because we're reaching the point where our kids from America, your kids from wherever you're at in Europe, they're going to be sent to die for Ukraine as well. So I hope you're prepared for that. I, however, am not. Now, Russia is the main focus right now, of course. But like I've told you all in past videos, you got to keep your eye on China right now because as the world's focus is on Russia and, of course, on the Middle East, China is making a lot of moves. And the U.S. is trying to keep up with China's moves. And now it appears as if we're sending new missile defense systems and just missiles in general to, I believe, islands around Japan, the Philippines, you name it. Let's go ahead and dive into this tidbit of information. U.S. deploys missiles to Japan and Philippines to counter China. The U.S. is stationing missiles in Japan's Nansei Islands and MDTFs in the Philippines to counter China's military buildup near Taiwan. These advanced systems boost strike precision and multi-domain defense under the first island chain strategy. As China ramps up its invasion drills around Taiwan, this deployment of missiles and missile defense systems sends a clear message to China. Washington is ready to defend regional stability and block China's growing influence in the Pacific. Let me just put it as simply as I can, and I'm not trying to scare anyone, but war is coming. War is on the horizon. It's not a possibility. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We got boiling pots all throughout the world, and we're kind of just waiting for what's going to boil over first. Is it going to be the conflict right now between Ukraine, NATO, and Russia? Is it going to be the Middle East with Israel and Iran and you name it? Or is it going to be China in the Pacific Ocean or in the China Sea or in this area of the world? Or is it going to be all three? Most likely it's going to be all three. They'll come one after the other, kind of like dominoes. We're kind of waiting to see which pot boils over first. The only problem is they're all kind of boiling at the same time, so it's hard to keep focus, you know what I mean? But yeah, war is on the horizon. And I say that not just because some of the things that we've discussed, not just because of some of what you see in the news, but because of the moves that are being made. There's moves being made by every country out there right now, and these moves aren't being made for no reason. NATO is preparing. NATO knows that it's going to war soon. Now, is that war going to be against Russia? That's what looks like is most likely right now. But I still think China and what's going on with China is our number one threat. I still think that. And I know it seems like Russia is the number one threat right now, but I'm worried about China because China's kind of hanging back. You got to really think about it. I pointed out 3 massive conflicts that are boiling over right now, right? But you already got war raging between Russia and NATO and Ukraine, right? You already got forces on the ground. You got bombs flying. You got all types of stuff going on. In the Middle East, you already got the war raging. China is sitting back chilling, y'all. America, our money is pouring into Ukraine. Our weapons are pouring into Ukraine. Our money and weapons are pouring into Israel. And China is sitting back. And NATO's forces are getting stretched thin. And China is just sitting here waiting. And I feel like they're going to use the strategy of waiting until NATO and the US is just too intertwined in these conflicts in Russia and the Middle East to really provide the amount of supplies, military personnel, and everything they would need for a full-on conflict with China in that region of the world. So China's buying its time right now, and China's going to swoop in once we're already fully engulfed in 3 or 4 other wars involving all of these other countries, and you name it. But hey, well, just watch as it plays out. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Hopefully we'll all have a nice Thanksgiving and we won't have to worry about none of this nonsense. But for now, let me know your thoughts down below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.